ambulance drivers making $15 an hour with an EMT making $25 an hour, driving around in an ambulance.
And somehow the ride's thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and somehow the ride is $2,500.
Prices can massively come down that much because you're not insured. Why are we jacking the prices up so high just because you are insured?
We've been losing rural hospitals at an enormous rate. They're just shutting them down because they're not profitable enough.
Hello and welcome back. This is episode 10. We have me and Topher here just kind of bullshitting tonight. We're a little hungover due to a Christmas party at our local pub last night. But we figured we'd get together, just kind of bullshit a little bit about a lot of stuff that's going on. Why don't we talk a little bit about the CEO of United Healthcare and the killing? Let's start there. What do you think about all that, Topher?
Yeah, so Brian Thompson, CEO of United Healthcare, had worked his way up at the company for 20 years. You know, he set policy, he changed the culture of the company into one that became the largest claims denier in the industry. The estimates I've seen for the number of people that die from claims denials a year from United Healthcare alone, something around 40,000 a year. So 40,000
a year, people actually from just denied claims alone.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the numbers will vary, but they're high. A lot of people are dying from this, and they're not like claims of, you know, somebody's asking for Botox and not getting it, right? These are like somebody who needs insulin to live.
Yeah, I did see what that one meme about the guy. It was a kid that was rationing out his insulin because he couldn't afford what was it, the health insurance he couldn't afford, or did healthcare actually deny his insulin?
Well, they'll deny it, but they'll also have deductibles that are so high that you can't pay. You know, I mean, the whole industry is kind of fucked up, but health insurance is especially fucked up. I mean, the insurance companies, they make their money by standing in between patients and care and stopping it from getting through. And like, while that's totally acceptable and legal in American society, other societies consider that to be criminal. You know, not all of them. It depends on the society, but it's a concept called social murder, which goes back to Engels writing about the conditions of the working class in England in like 1845. So it goes way back. And like, he's not the first person to talk about the phenomenon of people in power perniciously killing people by denying them access to resources. That goes all the way back to like the Catholic Church in 1311. They had come out and had to have a whole council and put forth a series of actions, which ended up being Friday the 13th. You know, they ordered the execution of all the Knights Templar they could find, because the Knights Templar had grown from a small supply chain organization to supply the Crusades into a cartel of investment banks that was engaged in imperialism and placing kingdoms under debt slavery, so severe that like the church had to step in and do something.
Holy shit. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know I watch a lot of Shapiro and stuff, and like, you know, I'm definitely right-leaning. I'm not going to lie there. I can't say I agree with everything Shapiro says, but he does make some interesting points. I don't think I agree with him a lot on this. It seems like he's kind of arguing for the points of the rich, because I guess at this point he is one. So he does make some certain points, though, when he does say, you know, killing a CEO isn't necessarily going to do anything. It's not going to change. It's definitely a form of terrorism. And I guess, yeah, you could call it that, because I guess that's the definition of terrorism, isn't it? Like violence, murder, to threaten some kind of change, to basically have some kind of political outcome.
I mean, like, terrorism is the most abused word in the English language.
Yeah.
The government called me a cyber terrorist a decade ago. I was passing out flyers and pamphlets telling people that Koch Industries was astroturfing the Tea Party, right? I was just like, they were pretending that this was a real movement when they were the ones that were funding it and were organizing all the protests and everything. So, you know, I passed out pamphlets and flyers around my college and around town, and I started trying to recruit bigger organizations and get other people to recruit bigger organizations like colleges into this boycott, because they were like destroying public sector unions. So I figured if we could get some universities on board, then we could raise some attention. But they came after us big time. I mean, that ended with the FBI raiding my one-bedroom apartment with with about 20 guys in full body armor, long rifles. I mean, it was cartoonish, absolutely ridiculous, but they also call all kinds of people that are peaceful terrorists. The water protectors that were trying to prevent the pipeline that's spilled a bunch of oil all throughout their lands and has wrecked part of their river.
Well, they didn't murder anybody, though. I mean, that's not.
They didn't murder anybody. No, they just tried to stand in the way of that equipment going and destroying their land. And
yeah, that's
for
a protest. That's not terrorism.
The government certainly labeled it terrorism. They're trying to label all kinds of in like Florida and some of the southern states. They're trying to label it that if you block traffic in a protest, that's terrorism.
Yeah, that's not
right.
It's not terrorism, and I don't agree with that, honestly. Like, I don't think that's I guess it's a way to get your voice heard, but blocking traffic and blocking, everyday citizens that are trying to get to work and shit, that's not going to do anything. I think in most cases, anybody that's caught in that traffic jam is going to be completely against your cause because you're fucking impending their day. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I feel. I don't really care what you're protesting.
It's more complicated than that. Like, so I do protests. I go to protests and participate in some. Generally, we don't really block traffic, and we're not like doing that generally. But I mean, sometimes there's a really important issue that just isn't getting attention, and at the end of the day, people of conscience have to do something about it, or innocent people are just going to suffer and die if you don't.
Yeah, it just raises awareness, I guess, to the situation.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to bring attention to it, but like we understand that like that makes people a little bit unpopular when you're going to do that. You're going to get some backlash, and you're going to have to deal with that. So I mean, it's complicated.
I mean, why not like just block traffic? Like, I don't know, like for government officials to a building or something like that. Like make it hard for them to get to work. I mean, why would you do it to regular citizens? I don't understand.
Well, because like getting regular citizens' attention is sometimes really important and really hard.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
like sometimes it's got to be done. Okay, so like in the vein of that stuff, the protests where people throw like paint or soup onto paintings and shit. Have you heard about those?
Yeah.
Well, the point of those, like a lot of regular people get angry, but the actual point of those is to target the stuff that like you and me aren't going to see the Mona Lisa every day. You know who's going to see the Mona Lisa like 3 times a week? Multimillionaires.
Yeah,
they're enjoying that stuff for culture. They're spending a bunch of money on museums and trying to make themselves big. So like that cultural power is the power of the rich. So we might have an abstract value of this art, but the real day-to-day value of it and where it's important is to the rich people. So they're trying to like step on and spit on the rich people's culture to their face, kind of.
I could see that.
Yeah. So like sometimes the motivations are complicated, and they might not be the audiences that are hearing about it might not be the audiences that it's directed at.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I guess back to the CEO thing. I guess Shapiro's stance, and I could be not 100% correct on this because it was a while ago when I watched it, but basically like the profit that the health insurance companies make, it's more so a drop in the bucket compared to like it's not necessarily going to change anything. And the one point that I will say that he does make that I do agree with is there are instances where there are non-for-profit healthcare systems and they're not doing as well as the for-profit healthcare systems. And he does say this one point that I would agree with right here. Take away the profit, take away the incentive. And in what area, like in what industry, if you were to take away profits, will it make it better? Like, and that's, I do kind of agree with that.
Yeah. So old Benny Boy is doing a bait and switch there.
Yeah.
So there's 2 different systems that we're talking about here. There's the healthcare system, and then there's the health insurance system. Now, the healthcare system profits by providing care. And sometimes there's some problems with this where you've got like monopolies in the pharmaceutical company, or you've got a big problem with these pharmacy benefit managers or whatever they're called, the PBMs, that are like massively increasing the price of drugs and cutting off availability of like ADHD meds and stuff. So like you have these specific and individual problems in the healthcare system. You have corrupt hospitals, you have monopolies that are problematic. But what we're talking about is the health insurance system. And the health insurance system only makes profit by denying claims.
Yeah.
So all of their incentives are to not let people have health care.
Don't they necessarily have a balance though, like of how much healthcare costs? And then you have people like me that are like, well, I mean, my work pays for my healthcare currently right now, but like, or whatever, I'm paying into a healthcare plan. I don't get much done ever. You know what I'm saying? So it's like for me, they are profiting off of me. Like, you know, that they don't. When you think about, I mean, I don't know what, it's probably $400 or $500 a month or some crazy shit like that, I'm sure. And I'm not getting that when it comes to actual care.
Healthcare is a fifth of the economy. It's huge, literally like 20% of the economy. So, and it's only gotten to be a larger and larger share of the economy as things like insulin go through the roof. And I mean, those are, like I said, problems with monopolies, problems with patents, with how we allow these markets to work, which is something that we can deal with through regulation, or
they don't need to
offer
charge
public alternatives.
They don't need to charge as much as they're charging. I mean, like, if you simply are not insured, that your bill will be cut in half. A lot of people's, it's still astronomical, but I mean, like, your bill will essentially be lowered very much so if you're not insured.
Yeah,
you can get like the good RX coupons and stuff. For
prices on stuff are pure bullshit. Like
exactly,
it's a cartoonish industry where absolutely nothing makes sense.
So yeah, it's almost like the health care system is in cahoots with the health coverage system.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's how you get because they want to push people. They're all owned by the same thing, right? So United Healthcare is owned by Vanguard Capital. It's owned by BlackRock. It's owned by State Street. It's owned by all the big investment firms on Wall Street that all own each other, the investment banking cartel.
Yeah.
And that same cartel owns most of our hospitals. It's trying to push more doctors into hospitals, into systems where they're employees instead of where they're running their own practices, you know, like they used to.
Yeah, well, I don't know. That the situation is weird to me. I guess I'm 50-50 on it because I understand something needs to be done. I don't know if it's necessarily murdering a CEO. That's a little harsh, but then there's people that say, you know, it changed literally nothing, and I do see a couple of changes that it made. You know, it definitely sent a message.
It definitely sends a message. I've seen it said that people who make Bernie Sanders impossible make Luigi Mangione inevitable.
Yeah.
You know, we've been pushing for reforms and fixes to a lot of these problems for a long time. The United States has one of the most expensive healthcare systems on earth, and we have the lowest life expectancy out of the developed world, out of all of our peer nations.
That's a lot of the food and bullshit we're pushing on ourselves.
I mean, you could say that, but it's also the fact that a lot of our healthcare is hidden behind a paywall. You know, you get cancer or something, you're fucked.
Oh, I know. My super sweet, cool new mini fridge for all our apple juice.
Or beverages.
But yeah, I mean, it's almost inevitable when it comes to like you're almost, the odds are stacked against you, and you're gonna get cancer essentially. Like in today's society, that's almost like, I don't know the statistics, but I mean, what is it, like 1 in 3 or even more than that? People like normally get cancer eventually at this point.
And I mean, like eventually you're going to die of something. So if it's not cancer, it's going to be heart failure or liver failure or something along those lines.
So, and that's kind of, I guess.
But like, I don't have. Sorry.
Oh, it's all good, man. You all right?
I don't have a problem with people making money off of their labor. I mean, I have a problem with people making money off other people's labor. You know, the incentive to work is obviously to get paid, but that's not necessarily the same thing as profits, depending on the way that you're looking at it, right? So, like, I absolutely want workers to be incentivized to provide care and to be within a system that allows them to do so, and to get paid well for what they do.
Yeah, and like that's kind of it too. Like that's the whole point of, like, I guess you'd call it the American dream. There is a point where it gets a little too big. I agree, but
yeah, but that's not what we're dealing with at all, right? We've got ambulance drivers making $15 an hour with an EMT making $25 an hour, driving around in ambulance, and they'll pick somebody up, drop them off at the hospital, do a half an hour of paperwork afterwards. So you've got 1 hour of time. That's like $40 of labor, maybe another $40 of labor support costs. So, like, you know, maybe $100 worth of labor and labor support for this ambulance over that hour.
And somehow the ride's thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and somehow the ride is $2,500. Who's all that money going towards? It's going to sort of some rich guy, right? Like, we want those EMT workers to be paid more. We want the doctors to be paid more. We want the nurses to be paid more. We want some rich dude sitting in an office doing nothing but, occasionally taking a flight to Epstein's Island to make less.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess in some cases, it's they're not hoarding all of the money. Like, there is something to be said, like, when it comes to fixing all that problem, all those problems, you couldn't just necessarily take the profit away from the big guy and have it fix all those problems. I mean, maybe you could and give everybody $1 raise an hour or something, which might help. But I guess in the grand scheme of it, the rich people's arguments always is there's not really that much money there. Now, do they need to be making that much profit? No, I don't think they do. But
they're just really good at hiding the money. I mean, Ben Shapiro loves to harp on this argument that like profit rates are really low, but that's a cheat. That's a total cheat.
Yeah.
What's actually happening is rich people make their money through something called total shareholder return, which is the increase of share prices, right? You buy 100 shares at $10, they increase to $20, and now you've doubled your money, right? Mm-hmm. That's not profit. Profit is something different. It's coming out. It's taxed. It's companies are trying to minimize that because of the taxes associated with it. And what they'll do instead is they'll focus on raising their share price as much as possible. So how do you do that? You buy more assets so that those shares represent a larger pool of assets. You buy your competitors so that you have a stronger control over your customer base, and you have more leverage over your workers so that you can pay them less and charge customers more. And that increases investors' confidence that you'll be able to bring in more money next year. So your share price will increase. So, and they'll also do things like stock buybacks, spend a crap ton of money buying stock so there's less of it out there, and then all of it's worth more. So these are all the different ways that, they spend an enormous amount of money to increase all the size of their stock. And like, this is an astronomical amount of money. So like the railroad companies, last year did something like a $24 billion stock buyback program, right? And all of the requests of the railroad workers across the board for their union amounted to like 0.2% of that. Like, absolutely not shit. And I mean, like, if you're just looking at the on the books profits for rail, it's pretty low. It's a pretty low margin industry. But when you look at the shareholder returns and what these people are spending their money on, they're spending it on giving themselves more money, enormous piles of more money. And they say, oh, well, there's no money here because they're pulling a bait and switch. They're lying to you about what numbers are
There's
important.
money. It's just not on the books, right?
It's not in the books in the same place that you're taught to look for it, right?
Yeah.
And they do that so that people like Ben Shapiro can go out there and be like, here, look at this low number. There's no money in the system. It's just hard. Life is hard. Well, we're 4 times as productive as we were 40 years ago, but everybody's living harder. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. No.
That money's going somewhere. And it's going to the people that are the richest people in all of human history by leaps and bounds. Nice. Got me a thumbs up.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Wow. I still need to look up where the fuck that thumbs up comes from, man. I have no idea. Nuno's going crazy up there. I wonder if Luke's showing up. Let's see.
Hey, hopefully.
But yeah.
So like killing the man doesn't like solve the problem. You're right. It's not an immediate solve. It does
somebody
strike
else is
some
going to
fear
step
into
in.
Yeah, somebody else has already stepped in. It's Andrew Whitty, the dude above him, who was the broader UHC company group, is stepping into that role as CEO temporarily, probably until they backfill it with somebody else. But yeah, he's just as intent on the policy. He's like, we have to stop this unnecessary care and keep the market lean and everything. And it's like, well, all of the victims of Brian Thompson and all of their families are still going to hate you over that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally get that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there is a simple fix to this or not. I would hope that it would get reformed. I know Trump has concepts of a plan for this. I'm interested to see what that's all about. I don't think he really has any solution to that. And the healthcare, it's a very complicated industry. That's the one thing. And even Luigi himself, like in that the whole thing is interesting. Like, I don't know why you would be in a McDonald's with the murder weapon, with this stuff, with the notes in a memoir or whatever. Like, that's a little all too convenient, you know? Like, so there's something to be said about that. And then people say, like, you know, his face doesn't necessarily match the camera shots. Like, the guy didn't have a unibrow. Luigi obviously has a unibrow. So is this really a fall guy?
Well, the prison dudes did a great job on his brows. They really cleaned him up nice.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, but it's really interesting. As far as like, is this a fall guy? Was this possibly like maybe a higher up inside job kind of thing? Because I'm sure that CEO, or, you know, you get into that group, you got a lot of money. You could piss somebody else with a lot of money off.
Brian Thompson wasn't just a mass murderer of his customers. He was also a criminal doing insider trading. And not only did he do insider trading on a criminal basis, when the Department of Justice launched their probe, he had insider information that probe was going to launch, and he insider traded on that information about his insider trading case.
No shit.
The absolute balls on that man. Like, this is somebody who's even stealing from his fellow rich people, right? So, yeah, there could have been some internal stuff. Or, you know, there's also the possibility that the feds were really nervous and scared about not being able to catch this guy, that it'll embolden people to action if he gets away with it, right? So you want somebody that you can pin something on.
So maybe it was a professional hit, let's say, like it was an actual professional hit. They really could not find the guy. They knew it was
I'd
clean.
give it like a 2% chance, though. I mean, Luigi does have some kind of characteristics of the type of person that's like a slight adjacent to intelligence person, because they went to the fancy schools that all the intelligence firms recruit.
Well, because
from.
he's not a poor person. You know, that's the interesting thing too. He's a rich person, but wasn't he like a Harvard or Yale graduate or some crazy shit like that?
He was at some Ivy League school.
Some Ivy League school, yeah. And, you know, he was brought up very rich. It's not like they didn't have the money to pay for any kind of coverage or any kind of problem.
He had a fancy, like, data job in fucking Hawaii or some shit. So
yeah, it's not like me or you that, you know, like you pretty much lose your house over medical debt or some shit like that. And I did see, I don't know if that happened or not recently, or if this was just something that was pulled from old stuff or whatever, but it was some healthcare company. They bailed out, like, I think it was like 11,000 people that like were in medical debt, like that, like I think it was affecting their mortgages or their house, like putting a lien on their house, like 11,000 people that had a lien on their house. They like forgave those loans for 11,000 people.
I don't know if a medical company did that, but I know that John Oliver did. He bought up a bunch of medical debt for a season finale of his show one year. Because, I mean, you can buy it up for pennies on the dollar and then just choose to forgive it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because the companies know they're not going to be able to collect much of it, so they'll sell it for less than it's worth.
Because it can't transfer over to your family or anything currently, right? Like,
right.
You know, so.
But the debt collectors will still try, because if they bought the debt, they want to try to, you know, make money off of it.
That's fucking... It's just so nuts to me, because it's like, it seems like the system is so rigged to the point where you work your whole life, you work your ass off, you do everything correct, and then you're just set up to just fail, because, you know, eventually you or your significant other or whoever, they're going to end up getting cancer, and you're going to have this astronomical bill. It doesn't matter how much you saved or whatever, and then they take it back. It's like the system is perfectly rigged.
It's like the company store. So like 150 years ago, all the corporations, you'd like work for a mine or something. You wouldn't like have a job, have a house somewhere else. You would live on the company land, and you'd pay rent to the company. And you'd also pay the company rent for your tools. And they would charge you so much for all of that that they knew you would never be able to pay it off. You would be in perpetual debt to them. So you would always have to keep going to work.
Yeah.
And you would always... So what they do is they trap people in usury so that they can essentially just steal their lives for profit.
That's essentially what's happening to all of us right now. I mean, I feel like... Because, I mean, like... All right, so this story, it's the same kind of story that's pretty much bound to happen to all of us. But let's... So there was this couple that did everything correct. They went to college. They got degrees. They got good jobs. They did not spend much. They, you know, basically saved for retirement. They saved everything. And then the wife got cancer. And it took 6 months for the healthcare industry to take everything that they had, their retirement savings and everything, and then they had to put a second mortgage on their house. In 6 months, their whole life was taken away from them. They took it all back. Now, that's not fucking right. That's not right.
And I mean, the worst part of it is that a lot of these drugs are researched and developed on public funds. So by the time these companies get them, they're just buying a patent for a couple $1 million, and then they're making that back in 3 months and then bleeding the American people dry and killing us by withholding care that is easily there, cheap to make, and could be saving lives. You know, these people are absolute predators that thrive on the suffering, the degradation, and the mass death of our innocent, hardworking people. And that shit has to end.
No, I agree, man. I mean, I don't really know what exactly to do about it, but I do know it. Like I was saying earlier, if prices can massively come down that much because you're not insured, why are we jacking the prices up so high just because you are insured? Because it's just they're in cahoots with each other. The money just skyrockets and goes through, and
yeah, it's just a bunch of complicated deal making and bureaucracy, so that they can try to push everybody into the system, so that you just can't get care if you're not in the system, and they can't turn you into a person in deep debt over it.
Yeah, that's fucking yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy to think about, but yeah, I don't know. I try not to think about it too much because it's like, what am I going to do? Just work my whole life away.
Well, I mean, a man named Luigi had some ideas about that.
Yeah, he certainly did. He certainly did. And like I could definitely see there being a lot of, I guess, what do they call them? Not repeat crimes, but like
copycats.
Copycat killers. Or
well, I mean,
the hell.
at the very least, you can you don't have to go and nationalize the whole healthcare system overnight, but you could nationalize the insurance industry.
If I was a healthcare CEO right now, I'd be very careful. I would definitely have some extra security.
Yeah, and then you have. It'll take some time. It takes some cultural adjustments. It takes some effort, but you step up regulation. You slowly hand over parts of control of the hospital system to the public, because we've been losing rural hospitals at an enormous rate. They're just shutting them down because they're not profitable enough, as profitable as the urban hospitals. And if those beds aren't full 100% of the time, then they're losing money on all those rooms that are empty.
And that's just not how you should look at healthcare.
Right. It's not. We need these beds there for when there's a pandemic and we have high need, or when there's a mass shooting and you have 150 injured people. You don't want to be treating them in the parking lot,
Exactly. Yeah. It's not I mean, and that's what I mean about it being such a complicated issue, because no, it should not be looked at as a for-profit industry, but at the same time, the profits do raise the incentive to be a better company, to be a better put together. And if there's
we
no
can
profit,
provide those incentives in other ways.
I mean, I hope, but and that's the thing. It's a little bit more complicated, because if things were just inflated that much, and if let's just say it was just United Healthcare that was inflating everything up, okay, well then Blue Cross Blue Shield comes in and they can get a way lower rates, and then they'd get everybody's business. This is a free market to where another CEO can start another company and then have lower rates if they could make it work, and then everybody would go to them with the lower rates because they're the better company that provides better service. But there has to be a reason. I mean, unless they're just all in cahoots with each other, and then
they're all owned by the same people, right? So where are you going to get the investment for a new health insurance company, right? Well, you're going to get
billions
it from
of dollars.
You got to, you got to go to the investment banking cartel. They're the people with all the money to invest, anyways, right? Yeah. But they already own everybody here, so they don't want to
So you're saying you'd have to go to Vanguard or BlackRock or somewhere like that to get the money,
and they already own all these companies, and are they going to invest in a company that's going to bring down their profits over here? No. That's not an efficient way to spend their money. They're going to invest on something like having two of the existing companies merge, spend $10 billion on that merger, so now there's only one option, and they can put more pressure on customers and workers.
Yeah, something has to be done.
Yeah.
I haven't really heard anybody have a solid solution. A lot of people like to complain about this, and I'm not saying it's right, because it's not, but I will openly say I don't have a solid solution for this, and I haven't really heard anybody that does.
Well, at the end of the day, the problem is that there's a bunch of rich people that are getting all the money that we put into this system, right? It's not the people who make the drugs. It's not the people who do the research. It's not the doctors. It's not the nurses. It's not the people who make the pharmaceuticals. It's a bunch of rich people in a bunch of different rooms making a bunch of money. So the problem here is those rich people. And the question is, how do we get those rich people out of those rooms without having to resort to Luigiing them?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I mean. You get to the point where eat the rich. Is that what we need to do? I don't know.
I hope not. I hope that there is a way to get these people to back off of their absolutely psychotic and insane death spiral, because it's not sustainable. It's not. They're going to wreck themselves, and they're going to wreck everybody else, and they're going to lead to chaos and violence in our society. And that is, you asked about terrorism earlier in the episode. That is terror. When they can sign a pen and tell you, I know your policy says this care is covered, but I'm sorry, you're going to die.
Yeah. Yeah, that's horrible.
And if you do anything about it, if you say anything about it, if you're even a little angry about it on the phone and say something a little bit colorful, well, you're going to be under arrest and you're going to be charged. You're going to have $100,000 bail, and you're going to be called a terrorist by the media.
Is that what happened to that lady? Like, I know they did arrest her, right?
Yeah,
because
she managed to get out on bail because they raised the money and they lowered the bail, so that happened. But she's still being charged. They're still trying to pursue her for this. We're just saying, defend, deny, depose. You're next on the phone.
Well,
angrily after they sentenced her to death.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's crazy. And that's kind of what I mean. At that point, you do got to be careful. If you are a CEO of these companies, or you're an advocate for these companies, you got to be careful because essentially you're dealing with people that have nothing left to lose.
Yeah, you're aiding and abetting, or you're directly causing their death. So, at the end of the day, you got to pay for that.
Exactly. You're sentencing a person to death, or you're sentencing a person's loved one to death.
Yeah.
So they don't really care if they're going to go to jail. They don't really care because you're basically telling them that their life's over anyways. And if it's your choice in your hands, and you're making that decision, then you can expect repercussions for that. And I will say that I don't condone murdering CEOs. I think there should be a better way to go about it. But if anything, it did spark probably a global conversation about this, and it did bring it, into light. Even something as simple as like stopping traffic, like we were talking about earlier, or whatever. But it's
all right. Here's a question for you that might throw you for a loop. You know how when a petty criminal gets shot doing something stupid, and a bunch of conservatives will celebrate, right? Oh, one less, right? Is that lowering crime? Is that solving the problem?
When a petty criminal gets shot for doing something stupid, is that lowering crime and solving the problem?
No.
Yeah.
Just like the CEO, there's going to be countless more behind him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're not solving the problem there either, but people feel excited about it. It's political. It's about what narratives are, what perspective people have on the problem. Do you love the CEOs? Do you trust them? Do you buy into their narrative that what they're doing is necessary and that they're not taking from us? Or do you not,
Yeah, and I guess it's a different scenario too, because you got to think, like, if that guy, they'd get shot or whatever, was an absolute piece of shit, and he was running around just causing people's lives, like terror in people's lives, well, then it's good that he got shot because he's not doing that to people anymore.
Yeah.
And I guess you could look at this situation like that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, even if there's going to be somebody else to fill in the gap behind him, maybe at least one guy got.
Yeah, and maybe they'll be a little more careful.
Yeah, maybe they will be. They'll at least be hiring more security, I can tell you that.
Yeah, and they might think about it a little bit deeper when they deny a claim now.
Hopefully.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and leave this one at that. We'll call this one episode 10. And we'll be back at you next week. We're gonna stick around and bullshit a little bit more and lay down some more episodes, talk about some things, and plenty to talk about. There's a lot going on. We got drone and orb sightings and all kinds of crazy shit. So who knows if it's the what do they call that? The
aliens, the Iranians, the Chinese.
Yeah, or the Revelations, or no, what do they call that?
The angels.
Yeah, that, and then God, what's the word I'm looking for? When God comes back and takes everybody back up to
Judgment Day, but you're looking
starts
for
with an R. Starts with an R. What's the word?
How are we blanking on this word? We're gonna look like idiots.
I know.
Because we're hungover.
Yeah, that's definitely why.
Yeah.
It's not the resurrection. It's not the redemption. It's the fuck. I can't remember.
It's where they all fly into the sky.
Yeah, the rapture. The rapture. There we go.
Like
Got
the
it.
city in Under the Ocean. Yeah.
Yeah. Or that movie, This Is the End, or whatever. That was a hilarious movie. I love that movie.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you so
Merry
much
Christmas
for
and shit too.
Yeah.
Like the day after Christmas, right?
I think it will end up airing the day after Christmas. So yeah, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and all that stuff. I hope you guys enjoy your holidays. Thanks again for watching. This has been episode 10, and we'll be back at you for more. Thank you.